Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to address a general question to the, I guess it would be the right side of the panel, Ms. Wright, James, and Mr. Klotz. Is the budgetary chaos around here threatening the national security of the United States? Ms. James?
I think it's a very, very serious concern. And if I may echo something I said earlier, it is extremely time-consuming and unsettling to be executing the way that we are executing. We're not making as good a judgments as we otherwise could if we had a fixed number to work with and the flexibility to implement. So that's number one. Execution is not what it could or should be. And then trying to plan for the future is incredibly difficult and enormously time-consuming when you are planning or trying to plan for different scenarios. So to get beyond this point, to come to an agreement for the entirety of our government, which I would hope could lift sequestration, give each of our departments a new number. I'll speak for the Air Force. I hope to be able to speak for the Air Force. We would like to know what we are really executing for and planning for and have a greater degree of certainty than what has been the case.
Ms. Wright?
Yes, sir. I will add to what Ms. James has said. Frankly, yesterday the service chiefs testified, and really what they said was that they all voiced their grave concern over the readiness of our force based upon the sequestration, the potential CR, and the budget that we.
So does that make the answer to my question yes?
I think, yes, sir, it does. We clearly focus on those individuals that we are sending into harm's way. We make sure they're trained. We make sure they're the best equipped and that they have what they need. But we have a very unready force because of the sequestration that we have just gone through and because of the potential sequestration and the CR in 14.
An unready force is a term that should strike fear into everyone that is listening to us today and everyone in this enterprise around here. An unready force.
Yes, sir, and readiness is just not training. Readiness is equipment modernization. Readiness is equipment repair. Readiness is collective and individual training. Readiness is personnel risk reduction, the suicides, the family programs. So that whole ball of readiness is affected because of the uncertainty of the budget.
And lack of readiness, lack of training, lack of all those things that you just listed put American lives at risk, do they not?
I would agree, yes, sir.
General Klotz, you've been in this business for a long time. Have you ever seen anything like what we're in right now?
No, Senator, I don't believe I have, except perhaps maybe for the immediate years after the end of the Vietnam War, when there was a significant drawdown. There was a lot of pressure. I would concur with what my two colleagues said. I think there's also an important personal dimension to that, and that is the civilian employees of the Department of Defense who are stalwart patriots and have given, in many cases, their entire adult lives to serving our nation through service as civilian employees. So to the extent that they were adversely affected, both in terms of the number of days they had to take furlough, but more importantly, the hit that they took in terms of their morale and sense of importance to the mission, I think is something that we ought to bend over backwards, never to repeat again, and to continuously remind them of the extraordinary contribution that they and their families make to the Department of Defense and to our national security.
Would you concur that the current chaos threatens national security?
It certainly makes it extraordinarily difficult for those people who are responsible for carrying it out to do the work that they need to do, whether it's operations and maintenance on day-to-day on a flight line, or whether it's developing the plans and programs that are going to position our services and the National Nuclear Security Administration for contributing to the national security in the future.
And I think, Ms. James, you said something very important, and that is it's not only the number, it's the uncertainty. It's the not knowing what the number is. I used to be in business. If we know what the rules are, you can manage to those rules. If the rules are unclear or change or uncertain, that's what really creates, that's as much of a problem as the whatever the number turns out to be.
Absolutely, Senator. And in direct answer to your question, I think this current uncertainty and, as you said, chaos does threaten our national security because, again, I will say what I believe about the Air Force. We have the best Air Force in the world, and I have complete confidence in them that they will step up to the plate and do whatever we ask of them. But in situations where you have not been able to put the resources into readiness that otherwise should have been put, it means that there's increased risk.
I think what's going on around here is an insult to the word chaos. Chaos is too mild a term. Ms. Wright, one quick, not really a question, but a suggestion. A lot of effort is put into recruiting people in the armed services. Not as much effort, in my judgment, is put into helping them get out. And we have a huge problem in Maine and across the country of veterans who are unable to navigate the system, the kind of outplacement counseling, if you will, that would be equivalent to the recruiting. I hope you'll pay some attention to that. I know that there are programs, but I think that's a place where we can improve because the system is complex. Young man or young woman leaves the service at the age of 22 or 23, and how to navigate that and the interplay with the Veterans Administration, I hope is something you'll pay some close attention to.
Sir, may I answer?
Yes, ma'am.
We've worked diligently on it, and I agree with you. That is something that we really needed to do. We have 206 transition sites across the nation where service members are required to go through a transition assistance program. As they go through that program, we have married up with Department of Labor and Department of Veterans Affairs to the point where we make the service members fill out, it's mandatory that they fill out a financial sheet, so we kind of know what their finances will be when they transition. We know if they have an education, we know if they have a job lined up. If they are in that at-risk category of not having those things that would create a livelihood, the Veterans Affairs community does a warm handoff. The example of that is if they get out at Fort Hood, but they're going back to Maine, we do a warm handoff to the veterans community that is in Maine so they can get the benefits that they have worked hard for and that they deserve. So we have started this program, and we are in the process of making very positive changes and have now some classes that will be effective 1 October for them to be involved with should they need to learn how to resume, should they need to get a job. And again, sir, we're doing it with the Department of Labor and Department of Veterans Affairs.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And I know I'm out of time, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to submit a question for the record to Mr. Letry involving better coordination between the military intelligence and the rest of the intelligence community. We're spending $75 billion in 2012 on intelligence, over 20 in the military, over 50 in the rest of the intelligence community. I would hope that there will be opportunities for working together, cooperation, coordination, and maybe saving a little of that money. I'll submit the question for the record. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator King. Senator McCain.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I thank the witnesses. Ms. James, I share your concern and that of the other witnesses about the chaos that my friend and colleague from Maine just pointed out. It makes it a little harder for me to make that argument when the F-35 is now the first $1 trillion weapon system in history, a consistent series of cost overruns that have made it worse than a disgrace. It's hard for me when a aircraft carrier, the Gerald R. Ford, is $2 billion over the estimated cost and no end in sight. I keep hearing that we have reduced the F-35 and the next batch we have will be significant controls. It's still one of the great national scandals that we have ever had as far as the expenditure of taxpayers' dollars are concerned. So I hope that you will stay on top of these cost overruns. They're throughout the services. And I can tell you my constituents, when they hear about the fact that the F-35 has consistently, over many years, exceeded any cost estimate that was ever begun, it's a little hard for me to get the kind of support and concern that the Senator from Maine and I share. And it is still not under control. And you know, I'm sure you know, we still have not had an audit of the Department of Defense. And yet we keep, time after time, we mandate it here in our defense authorizations bills, and yet that audit is never able to be completed. The American people at least deserve an audit of what the United States military is doing.